The chief surgeon laughed when he read the order. 5 wounded Navy SEALs, fresh off a Black Ops extraction gone wrong, and the assignment sheet had one name attached to all of them, Nurse Emily Hart, 6 weeks out of training, standing frozen in the hallway with a chart shaking in her hands. If you believe in second chances, in the quiet ones who prove everyone wrong, hit like, drop a comment, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Midnight Tales, because what happens next will stay with you. Emily had wanted this job since she was 12 years old, sitting in a hospital waiting room while doctors fought to save her father's life after a factory accident. She remembered the calm voice of the nurse who held her hand that night, who promised her everything would be all right even when nobody could promise that. She became a nurse to be that voice for someone else. But nothing in her training had prepared her for Naval Medical Center Night Harbor, where the chief surgeon, Dr. Marcus Reyes, ran the trauma ward like a battlefield of his own, and rookies were expected to prove themselves worthy of touching a patient at all. When the 5 SEALs were wheeled in that night, blood soaking through field dressings, monitors screaming, radios still crackling with mission chatter, Dr. Reyes took one look at the assignment board and scoffed loud enough for the whole ward to hear. He said the government must be desperate, handing America's most elite warriors to a girl who still asked where the crash cart was kept. He said it in front of the other nurses, in front of the orderlies, in front of Emily herself, and nobody laughed harder than the senior staff who had spent years watching rookies wilt under his tongue. Emily did not answer him. She simply walked to the first bed, where a soldier named Carter lay gray-faced and shivering, his pulse thready under her fingers, and she began to work. The next 4 hours blurred into a single unbroken thread of decisions. She packed a chest wound that was filling faster than the surgeon on call could reach the room. She caught a silent drop in blood pressure on the second SEAL that the monitor hadn't flagged yet, because she had learned to read a patient's skin, not just a scream. She talked a third soldier through a panic attack when the anesthesia began to wear off too soon, her voice low and steady, the same voice she remembered from her father's hospital room all those years ago. She did not sleep. She did not eat. She barely stopped moving. And when Dr. Reyes finally swept through at 4 in the morning, expecting to find chaos he could point to as proof of his judgment, he instead found 5 men stabilizing, one by one, under the hands of the nurse he had mocked in front of the entire ward. He said nothing that night. But word moves through a hospital faster than blood through a vein, and by morning half the staff had heard how the rookie had held the line alone while 2 senior nurses called in sick and the on-call doctor was stuck in surgery 3 floors up. Some admired her. Others resented her for making the chief surgeon look foolish. Emily wanted none of it. She wanted only to keep her patients alive, to earn the trust of men who had been trained to trust no one they hadn't bled beside, and to prove, if only to herself, that she belonged in that ward. The days that followed tested her in ways she hadn't imagined. Carter, the soldier from the first bed, would not speak to anyone but her, flinching whenever another nurse approached, gripping Emily's wrist so tightly during his worst nights that bruises bloomed beneath her sleeve. Dr. Reyes used every excuse to needle her, questioning her charting in front of visiting physicians, reassigning her to the least desirable shifts, waiting, it seemed, for the moment she would finally break and quit like he believed all rookies eventually did. She almost did break, more than once, crying alone in the supply closet after a 12-hour shift with no lunch and no thanks, wondering if the sacrifice was worth the exhaustion carved into her face. But every time she thought of walking away, she thought of Carter's hand around her wrist, of the way his breathing slowed when she was near, and she stayed. Then came the night that changed everything. A commanding officer arrived unannounced, dressed in dark naval uniform with the kind of quiet authority that made even Dr. Reyes straighten his coat. He had flown in from another base the moment he heard his men were wounded, and he walked the ward bed by bed, speaking to each soldier in a voice thick with something between command and grief. When he reached Carter's bed, the soldier grabbed Emily's hand before she could step back, and in front of the officer, in front of Dr. Reyes, in front of everyone, Carter said her name like it meant something sacred. He told the commander that the nurse standing beside him was the reason he was alive to see him at all, that she had never left his side, that she had fought for him when no one else believed a rookie could. The commander turned to look at Emily properly for the first time, and something shifted in his expression, a flicker of recognition that had nothing to do with the ward or the uniform she wore. He asked her name again, slower this time, and when she answered, his eyes went distant for a moment, as if pulled backward through years he rarely let himself revisit. He told her that a nurse with her same name had once sat beside a dying soldier in a field hospital overseas, refusing to leave his side through a night everyone else had given up on, a soldier who happened to be a young lieutenant fresh out of officer training. He said he had never forgotten that nurse's face, or the promise she made him that night, that he would walk out of that hospital and go on to do something that mattered. He had spent years searching, quietly, for a way to repay a debt he thought he'd never get the chance to settle. He had not known, until this very moment, standing in a ward he'd flown across the country to reach, that fate had circled back around to hand him the answer. The room went silent except for the soft beeping of monitors and the sound of Dr. Reyes's clipboard slipping from his hand. The man who had mocked her, who had built his reputation on doubting rookies until they proved themselves worthy of his approval, stood frozen as the commander told the entire ward that this young nurse came from a family whose sacrifice had saved his life once before, and now, without even knowing it, she had done it again for 5 more men who wore the same uniform. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Before we close this story, I want you to do one thing for me. Comment the word "believe" below if you think second chances are something everyone deserves, no matter how many people doubt them along the way. Emily never asked for recognition. She never wanted an apology from Dr. Reyes, though one came anyway, quiet and awkward, delivered in private where no one else could witness his pride bending. What she wanted was simple, the same thing she had wanted since she was 12 years old, holding her father's hand in a waiting room, to be the reason someone made it through the night. She got her wish 5 times over, and in the process, she reminded an entire hospital, and a commander who had carried a debt for years, that the smallest acts of devotion can echo across a lifetime, waiting patiently for the moment they are finally repaid.